BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and it's time to talk about the original Beyblade series, and this time we're talking about Daichi and Kenny, or Chi from the original Beyblade trilogy, and what would happen to the plot if Daichi didn't exist in the Beyblade anime story, and who exactly would take up his mantle as the fifth blader. You made it this far? Type Kenny deserved better? Because let's get one thing straight, this is not a Daichi hate post. In fact, there are several reasons why I'm making this video. One, people blaming Daichi for breaking up the team is not only completely incorrect when you go back and rewatch, but this is actually going to point out exactly why this isn't true once you realize his exclusion / replacement wouldn't really change the story that much. Two, this actually fixes and addresses a problem with D-Right's anime when it comes to their cast. Usually they will introduce a character that's either a mechanic or has the potential to battle or doing the most for the story, mostly a female character, and either they'll only make them mechanic and really battle, or if they were a battler, reduce their role to only a mechanic, or just underuse their role in the story. Prime examples include Bull going from one of the main protagonists to martyr B's good side, not choosing him to square off against his darker half. Then in season 2, basically becoming the mechanic. Almost half of Rory, aka Ruby's scenes fighting in the anime of Beat 'em on Crossfire, were cut and never explored the member of the WBMA staff joining the tournament officially. Madoka is great, but she only gets to battle once. Nika was never given her own Beyblade in Season 3 onwards of Burst, despite her and her brother playing when they were younger. Sexism is a strange thing in fiction, and thankfully Moti was the one who finally broke this cycle. But it's always disappointed me because the concept of a mechanic who's been on the sidelines, slowly getting the confidence to become a blader and join the main cast, sounds like a really great story and character opportunity that they just never wanted to explore. So first, I want to explain Daichi's backstory. The movie and the anime touched upon it, but basically he was a jungle boy whose family lived in the mountains, and his father died trying to save the rest of his co-workers from an accident that caused most of the logs to fall on to everyone, sacrificing himself so that they would be safe. So he told Daichi in his dying words to become number one in the world, and he had the Gaia or Strata Dragoon ship hidden within the Dragoon Beyblade tip. Even if you hate the character, you gotta give him credit. That is a very sad backstory, and that's not something anyone should go through. After trying to figure out what he wants to be number one at, since he really only used Beyblade for woodcutting, he runs into a bunch of bullies cheating in a casual match where Kenny also happens to be there looking for research, and Kenny guides Daichi on how to properly use his Beyblade, wins, and his scar glows red, like how in the manga most of the blade breakers grow their bit beasts on their foreheads. Kenny thinks that he could take on Tyson eventually, and Daichi accidentally starts a gang based on his wins, but Rei defeats him, and Daichi activates his spirit, promising to take Rei's words to heart and do maintenance and show care for his Beyblade. He loses to Hiruta, aka Carlos, who found a new respect for Tyson, and finds the bit for Gaia and Strata Dragoon underneath the cover, realizing it's the one that connects him to his dad. There are a few more characters and plot lines I'm not mentioning before Daichi eventually meets Tyson within the canon of the manga. But basically, if you only watch the anime, just assume Daichi had like this huge character journey ahead of time, well, before he met Tyson, and that's where we meet him in the present day in both the manga and the anime. In hindsight, I think they should have made a 22/45 minute OVA about his adventures, given that he only had like a couple of chapters, I want to say about like 3 to 8, before he was introduced in the manga properly with the storyline for the others. But it's ridiculous that anyone thinks Daichi ruined the series or caused the G-Revolution team to split, when in both storylines, they don't even have him as the cause. In the manga's version of Season 2, before Tyson and Kai fought Zio, Dickinson revealed that there was going to be a global Beyblade championship that would be done in tag team formats with up to 4 people joining a team, and Max and Ray decided they were going to go to their respective home teams and join, and there was no bad blood between them. In the anime, you can't even use that argument because they only met Daichi in episode 1, and then episode 2 announces the world championship when Max gets a letter from his mom and Ray was thinking over the championship and they decided to represent their home teams. Tyson was upset, yes, but Daichi had nothing to do with their decision to leave whatsoever. Remember, in both the anime and the manga, Japan still had a tournament to decide who was going to be the representatives, with Tyson and Kai winning, and Daichi fights Kai in both, but the only difference is in the manga, we're told about it before they reveal how the fight actually went about, and actually they did have a rematch later, but that was a side chapter. But in the anime, we actually got to see the fight. Also in the anime, they had Kenny participate, and he almost made it to the finals, but he got beat by a cheating copycat that Tyson took down later because they didn't adapt the samurai that Daichi had fought in one of his spin-off chapters, and Kai left the team in both interpretations, so Daichi clearly wasn't the problem. So what are we doing? Basically, if Daichi doesn't exist, Kenny would basically be the next in line, given that there's no way in hell they'd give the 5th Holy Bit Beast to Hillary. Would be cool though, and he's been with the Blader since the start. But if Daichi nor his family don't exist in the story, there's a way to make it work. Bit Beasts are sacred fighting spirits with their essence usually locked behind ancient monuments throughout the world, so we can assume that Daichi's father managed to find said beast when he created the rest of the Beyblade for the Dragoon. We don't know where he found it, but given that Team Psychic managed to find a bunch of fighting spirits that they used for their Beyblades maybe during Seasons 2 second half, we could reveal that in one of the rocks, Daichi and Hillary either stumbled upon or ended up finding Gaia among some of the rubble, which would lead into Season 3. This might be an abandoned plot point, but in episode 2 of V-Force, Hillary was able to respond to the presence of Flash Leopard by fainting, and in episode 15, she was the first to see one of the Saint Shield's invisible Bit Beasts, but also make it visible. Plus, she was kind of close to figuring out Zeo and the Cyber Bit Beast plots. You can make it so that she actually has an affinity for understanding Bit Beast. In Season 3, she recognizes that Gaia Dragoon's chip, and Avatar wants it to be a good fit for Kenny's blade, and inserts it inside of Hopper. Plus, Kenny has been a part of the show since the beginning, so I felt like if it came to anyone in the final season getting an upgrade, I feel like he would be the one that caused the least amount of ire. It's kind of like people who weren't upset that Kenta became the legendary Blader after he wasn't doing that much in the first 2 seasons, until Fury progressed his desire to catch up to the others, also held by the fact that Flash Asatario had an upgrade in the toy line, but semantics. So with Kenny, I feel like with this, the animosity between Tyson and Daichi that somehow led to Daichi getting more blame despite the fact that Tyson's performing anxiety and frustration with his teammates leaving kind of cost them the first 2 rounds would be gone. And it'd be a combination of Tyson's own insecurities plus Kenny's drive to improve, mirroring Yuki, but with more payoff alongside the underdog story. Starting with Ray and Lee versus Tyson and Kenny, this one would be blamed on just Kenny struggling more in the fight, combined with Tyson's anger about feeling abandoned by his teammates, leading both of them to struggle thanks to a lack of leadership and camaraderie, would lead into their fight with the Blitzkrieg boys next. For this one, Tyson ran out, and without Daichi, Kenny would have to step in and do all the rounds. The funny thing is, I could actually see Kenny coming up with a plan to try and cause the stadium out from first collision with Kai by having his spring blade knock Dronza out of the stadium before it could fall into the dish, only for it to be amplified because Kai wanted to throw the fight after seeing Hero intentionally threw Tyson off the game, leading into Kenny versus Tala that we got. I know someone's going to argue that there's a rule saying that if you lose one round, you can't participate in the next one. But usually that wasn't really told as a rule, just more of a, hey, we need a tiebreaker round, so let's just put in the 2 people who won. But I have an idea to make it work. For his first fight with Tyler, you can keep it the same, though the Bit Beast should make him stronger. But for the rematch, he made the bearing tip for Daichi, so just have it revealed that he made a stronger backup blade, more catered to Strata's strength, and this time he's able to get the timing right. It'd give him a win that would fix his flaw and improve his character developments. Then we get Matilda versus Kenny in place of Daichi, where she blows up his blade, resulting in a tie. Kenny used that to make Strata Dragoon G out of Strata Dragoon V, so I think we could still keep that. That's fine. Afterwards, we could have Julia and Raul versus Kenny and Tyson, which Kenny feels more confident about using his blade now, but it's Tyson's performing anxiety that caused him to match, so this change would be harmless. The real change is that Rick would fight Kenny in place of Daichi. And it's finally time to address something that's been bugging me for years. See, the manga also had Kenny battle, but long story short, it was a tag match with Tyson because Daichi's Gaia Dragoon was wrecked alongside Pierce Hedgehog thanks to her overwhelming Miguel. How did the fight go, and did it treat Kenny with respect? Tyson and Max's fight, but Kenny almost got knocked out of the side by Rick, but Max came in to save him and told Kenny that they should focus on not running away and fight head-on. So Kenny decides to collide with Rick, but Rick won the clash pretty anticlimactically and easily despite all that build-up. And yet, despite the fact that Tyson and Max can fight each other with Rick also helping Max, Rick decides to just throw the fight and leave it to Max when they could have easily just had Kenny versus Rick be more extended, so if one of them were to lose first, at least the other one would have been out of stamina, or just leave the final fight to Tyson and Max. Like, you give Kenny his only opportunity to shine in the tournament, and not only do you just make him lose anticlimactically, you don't even give him, like, any effort of showing that it helped out the battle. So, for this fight, what we're going to do is have Kenny decide that with his new upgrade, he's going to combine the jumping power of his Hopper with the attack power elements of Gaia Dragoon. It's a result that gives him his special moves and attack power, more force and momentum behind it. In the anime, the fight between Daichi and Rick resulted in a clash between Great Cutter and Drop Rock. If we do the same thing, except Kenny's able to use a jumping blade in order to give himself more power and momentum, that would not only give the win a mechanical development, but also a character development reason why Kenny would be able to win the fights. The next battle would be Raul and Julia versus Kenny and Tyson rematch. And this time, having Kenny just replicate Daichi's idea of using Great Cutter to catch up with Tyson and then blast off Dragoon as part of a strategy to have Tyson finish off F Dynasty out in the open to finish them off would fit Kenny's character, while also just incorporating the same elements. Then we get Tyler versus Kenny, resulting in a tie, and this time, Kenny would have the elements of his Gaia and Hopper together, so it's a more even fight. Heck, even if he tried the same strategy, but switched to using a special move at the same time Tyler did, it'd feel less like stalling and more of an effective take on the strategy, while Tyson's getting ready. For Max versus Kenny, since we cut Daichi versus Max, or, well, we're putting Kenny in place of Daichi, the funny thing is this fight actually happened in both the anime and the manga, but in different circumstances, because one happened before he fought them in the World Championships, and the other happened after the World Championships. For the anime, I would say someone went up to Kenny and questioned why his skills are good, so Max offered him a challenge to see how far he's come. Besides, Max won that fight anyway against Daichi, so I don't see that being a bad thing. Finally, we get to Ming Ming versus Kenny. Now, I know people are going to say that this fight will be terrible because Kenny has a crush on her, and that would make things a little bit weird in the sense he would probably intentionally nerf himself in order to not piss her off. But remember, Kenny was the first to recognize that her voice helps her concentrate on her blade, so he would find a way to counter it with his own voice like Daichi did. It would actually make the loss also make more sense, not that the original didn't, but Kenny's confidence in voice ain't as powerful as Ming Ming's. So while he would try to use a special move in order to use the vibrations or sound to counteract hers, she would probably also just use V Temptation and drain herself in order to win. Considering most people don't like his crush on Ming Ming, and he should be with Emily, but semantics, I think it would work best that he were not only avoiding letting that get the better of him in the fight, but that would actually lead him to probably befriending Ming Ming, since he actually did respect her in his own way, but now we get respect for her more as a proper and fierce blader. Now, would I want this to happen? Debatable. I mean, I don't hate Daichi. I like him enough. He's a good character, in my opinion. And he did accomplish his dream, even though he doesn't really have any closure arc to close up on in the second half of the show. But with Kenny, I feel like the storyline could work in a different series because we saw it work with Kenta. Though in terms of supporting characters actually becoming a main character and actively getting involved with the sports combat going on in the story, it would be something that you don't really see that often in sports anime, even though it's something that should really happen more often. But tell me what you guys think. I know this seems weird since I said I was going to be talking about Legendary Bladers, but technically the G-Revolutions are the Legendary Bladers of their respective series because they were chosen by the 5 Sacred Bit Beasts and ties with the 5 elements. But let me know your thoughts on this video. Comment on what you think I should talk about in the future, or what you thought about this video and my takes. Thanks for watching, and BIP Bizarre Inches Productions, signing off.